AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
Welcome to the AI in Action podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kelly. Today, we're delighted to have Jakob on the show. Jakob Muus is the CEO and founder of Attrax. Welcome to the show, Jakob.
Thank you very much.
Jakob, tell us a little bit more about you. What brought you into the data field and why and how did you join Attrax?
I'm originally from Denmark. I moved to Germany, where Attrax is located, 10 years ago, I think. Yeah, I can't remember anymore. Yeah, 10 years. And I got a job at the Volkswagen Group, where I was doing innovation management, first in the group research, where I was focusing very much on product service systems. And after a couple of years there, I moved to Volkswagen Financial Services, which is the financial arm for the whole group, for all brands in the Volkswagen Group. Again, doing trend and research management, so to speak. I was like a futurist in the strategy department. My job was mainly to look into the future, as it sounds a little bit odd, but it has a good structure to it. You find a way to try to look into the different scenarios and assess the different scenarios and use that as a basis for making strategic decisions for which kind of innovations do we need to invest in. So that was my background, and that's what I've been working with until 2017. And one of the points that I really focused on and that I always was very curious about was the point about using vehicle data to help fleet managers and vehicle owners to become more efficient. I mean, if you look around, you see everyone wants to save diesel and fuel, and they want to save CO2. And it doesn't matter who they are. Everyone wants both trucking, but also private vehicles to become more efficient. And the only thing we see a serious attempt to do is to make the hardware more efficient, to have like electric vehicles or to like smaller engines. And no one is really trying to find ways to become better in operating them, like better operational excellence, where we can actually save a lot of CO2, like 15%, at least 15% of the fuel spent right now in transport is unnecessary. So I had looked at that for a while, and I decided in 2017 to leave my employment at Volkswagen to found Attrax. And in 2018, I founded Attrax and got a good investment. And since then, I've been working on solving this problem. I'm mainly focusing on heavy commercial vehicles, and the reason is that it's easier to get the data out of these vehicles than it is from smaller vehicles. But my hope is that in the future I can also help, like that we can help all kinds of fleets to become more efficient.
Well, being a co-founder myself, I know that setting up your own company isn't necessarily the most straightforward process, particularly even a company such as Volkswagen. Tell us a little about some of the problems you try to solve and the companies that get the most value from the work that you do.
What we're doing is we take data out of trucks. Yeah, we have a software as a service where a fleet owner can log in and make a login, and then he can add the data from his trucks. To that, I need to say, we're lucky that most trucks in Europe are born with an onboard telematic system. That means that every 30 seconds they send data to a cloud, and and the owner of the data is the owner of the fleet, and the holder of the data is then the truck producer. so to speak. And what we're lucky about is that like we don't have to install any hardware. We can just let the owner of the fleet have a login with us, and as soon as he's done that, he can add the data through an API key that's automatically generated. And when we get that data, we get like super granular data. It's beautiful. It's not raw data. It's like a snapshot of, I think the original standard had 70 data fields. Right now we're around 100. And down to each, like down to how many milliliters went out of of diesel went into the engines within the last 30 seconds. So we really have very beautiful granular data that we use to create what I like to call a context-aware benchmark. I think if you're a data scientist, you would rather like to call it digital twins that we can be able to compare each other with each other. And the reason why it's so interesting is when you have a vehicle, it's very easy to say what you have used, right? It's like simple descriptive analytics. You have like each fleet manager has access to say how much diesel did my driver spend today, and how much did he spend per 100 kilometers. So you can see the load of it, but it's very difficult to say if it was good or bad. One of my favorite examples is that the best driver you can find might have 35 liters per 100 kilometers when he's been driving with a full 40-ton truck in the city. So 35 liters per 100 kilometers, whereas a very bad driver would have 25 or 26 liters per 100 kilometers if he drives empty in a 40-ton truck on the flatlands on a highway. So there's a big, like the context is very important to, and it's about the weather, it's about the driver style, it's about the age of the truck, it's about the traffic, of course, but it's also about the route, the load, how you have loaded the truck. So what we do is we take these analysis and say, this is what you have spent, this is what you could have spent, this is what you should have spent, and then we analyze what can you do in order to get there. And thereby we have developed different features in our product. Not all of them are on the market yet, but we're trying to develop it with pilot customers that we become good at, for instance, making alarms when there's something wrong that you should have a look at. When it comes to using our measurement of the total cost of ownership to suggest which trucks should you invest in, which one should you buy, including electric trucks, very important, and to decide on which specialized driver courses should your drivers get on in order to improve their fuel efficiency. And very important, we measure whether we were right or not, so to speak. So those are sort of like, those are examples of what we do.
There's a lot of different factors there. So you're saying in summary that attracts the platform is analyzing telematics data from trucks, your data identifies saving potentials of CO2 and fuel, and then you enable an automatic CO2 reporting according to international standards. So it's quite interesting because when I was looking into this, the foot pedal of the truck driver can impact so much of what's actually consumed. So if you've got someone who's pretty heavy on the foot, their driving style could massively impact this. Now I appreciate all the other different factors, and maybe it's not as simple as being that kind of heavy-footed driver, but for a customer's perspective, I like the way you give the three different options of what they could be actually saving if they actually very systematic and thoughtful in their approach.
I mean, I do see the AI, the area we're working in is sort of like product service systems, right? And it's really important for me to be able to deliver decision management and decision support to these people. It's my first approach to it was I looked at an industry. I looked at a whole and the industry is complex, right? So we have both the truck owners. Those companies are often very, very small. 80% of the fleets in Europe have 5 trucks or less. 90% have 20 trucks or less. So it's a very long tail of small companies who who don't really have the technology to be very precise and efficient in what they do. Their margins are extremely low because they're under pressure from the logistics service providers who let them drive under their flag, so to speak, but the fleet owners are like just small owner drivers and small companies. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to find out how can we help to make the right decisions, because we know they want the same thing. We all want the same thing. We want not to drive less because we're all happy that we have a logistics system that functions. We all got reminded when we suddenly couldn't buy pasta and toilet paper recently, but we also want them to be more efficient, and we want to help them be more efficient. So that's the whole logic behind it, is to say, let's use AI to help people make the right decisions, because that's basically what they want.
So if we kind of get a little bit granular on it, and we want to kind of break it down into a little bit of detail. So how much CO2 will be saved if companies use track solutions? You know, like if the average truck drives 150,000 kilometers a year, what kind of money could be saved here? Or what if someone's listening to this who's got a general interest, or from a more of a business perspective, what could they get?
It's very difficult. I know when I talk to a fleet manager, if I say to him I can save 4%, he will say, okay, that could be true. Fact is that we have seen we can save up to 15%. And then they say, no, go away, you're lying.
Right. Wow.
But let's play with the number 15%, right? It's you see on a money level, round about 50,000 euros a year is spent on diesel in a company, and if you can save 15%, it's like 7,500, and that's a lot of money, and that's especially if you have a 3% margin, that would be like that will make the margin enormously much higher. When it comes to CO2, and that's of course in the short term, it's linear connected, because we're only talking about diesel trucks at the moment. An average truck would spend around about 9 million tons of CO2 and a year. And if you can say 15%, it's like 1.3, I think 1.35 million tons. That's a little bit less than a football field of a forest, so to speak, if you wanted to offset it. So there's a lot to save. There's a lot to come for. It is one of those areas where you just really know it's like, also if we just are half right, we still have won, so to speak.
Yeah, because everyone wants this to be successful. Everyone can see the benefit of that. And with the margins being so small, even if you're going to get half of what that 15%, people are going to be crazy not to actually take that opportunity to utilize this and look at it. So coronavirus has impacted so many different industries. It's hard not to find one industry has been impacted from it. How's it impacted yourself and the team at Trax?
Of course, it's been very difficult. It's been a tough round. I think what we have, like, if you see the silver lining, the good thing of what has happened is we have learned to focus. We have learned to go to the people with the money. And okay, I'll explain what happened. First, in the beginning, when we in end of March or mid-March found out, okay, we really need to do something now, our reaction was like, I had to fire 2 people, unfortunately, cut the team down a little bit. And in Germany, there are some very good systems that can help small companies through the crisis. So we took advantage of that. Unfortunately, I had to furlough most of the employees, but they're still there, so to speak. We still talk, we still are in it. Then we had the problem that we needed to raise capital. That's always the problem for startups, right? It's like, it's not enough that the customers won't come. The second is that we need to raise capital. And we had some whole other plans with our company than what happened, of course. The 1st of January, we had put our product on the market, but in a very silent launch. We wanted to have 3 months to fix the bugs, to be ready to go and to shoot it big. We had made with some of the biggest media in Germany, both in the industry, but also broadly, an event on the 1st of April, where we had invited a very important professor who's like the expert of decarbonizing transport. We invited some very important people from NGOs that are working on decarbonizing transport, and we wanted really to announce it big. Of course, that was the 1st of April. It all disappeared. The articles we had written and sent to the newspapers and the media, they said, yeah, we're going to post the article when we're done with the crisis. So no customers. And when I then started calling the customers and say, Hope, are you still on? Some of them ghosted me. The nice one said to me, call me back in October. So we really saw everything went down to zero, and I still needed to raise capital. And of course, the investors said, nah, if you don't have any real customers on board, we had expected more customers at this moment. So they also had their feet still. What we did was, and where we've been able to sharpen our looks is, sharpen the approach that we're using is, we did see that everyone who owns a fleet said to us, no, Jakob, the first couple of months, they were like, no, we need to see if we can get our drivers home and over the border without in quarantine. Secondly, we need to see if we can get our employees to work without bringing their kids. And thirdly, they had the big problem of all the excess supply of space, so to speak, in the trucks, so that the prices were dumped everywhere. Like everyone was driving minus trips, and so no one really had the mind space to work with us at that time. So what happened was we said, okay, there are still some people who really want this industry to be more efficient, and they have money for it, and they have also plans for it. And those are the shippers, so the purveyors or the customers of the fleet managers. They are really, really focused on making sure that they have a precise measurement of CO2 and automatic, so that they don't have to sit with Excel sheets. And when they have the precise measurement and allocation of CO2, they also can make some strategic decisions on how to lower CO2. So we focused our communication even more and went out to these companies and said, okay, we have found a solution for you to measure and lower CO2 in the supply chain, especially when it comes to trucking. And the only thing you have to do is to make sure that your subcontractors, the truck owners, have to use Track's system. Then we can measure automatically exactly how much CO2 was spent on each trip, each route, and more importantly, on each product, so that we down to each and every single chocolate bar can say how much CO2 has it cost. And within the last 2 months, life is much easier. So we have now gotten customers. They have all lived, come back, so to speak, especially on the shipper side. And we also have investors now. So we're closing our 2 million round as we speak. And I'm pulling my employees back from the furlough, and things are looking much brighter.
Jakob, thank you for sharing that story. Your very honest account of the current situation, and it's great to see you've got the investment now, and you're kicking on as well too. And shippers realizing that Trax offers a viable solution to track and report CO2 emissions, and the awareness of importance of accurate CO2 reporting areas, would these be the main areas for Trax to succeed, or would there be additional areas to look at?
Most people who work with the trucking industry realize how difficult it is. It's a very conservative industry. There's a lot of gut feeling management, small companies. It's difficult to get your foot in the door. What I see now with the CO2, what I have seen of successful business cases has always been focused on this cooperative, to say, okay, if we know that everyone wants to save fuel and CO2, Everyone wants it to be more efficient. Maybe we can get them to work together on it. And that's our approach to it. I think you could call it a growth hack. It probably is. But for me, it's also, I think there was like, I built up a quite strong network in the logistic world, in the European logistic industry. And a very clever guy said to me, you know what, Jakob, just stop focusing on the carriers and by all means stop focusing on the logistics service provider. It has always been the shipper who pays. He's the one who pays. He's the one who has margins that can actually be used for something. And go to the shipper, because he would like to, if someone ever buys an electric truck in this industry, it's because the shipper says to the carrier, you should drive an electric truck. It's not the other way around. And I said, okay, that's interesting, because now we can use this and play like for the both sides and say, this is a cooperative solution. We make sure that we can tell you as a shipper who of your carriers could have an electric truck, on which route, where does it make sense, how far, like we don't want anyone to have an electric truck that he can't use. So that we can actually go in and say, these are the, like, create facts, so to speak, and then help them make strategies for how they lower CO2, which again pays into the carrier who will be helped how to lower his operational costs.
You're listening to the AI in Action podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kelly, Chief Customer Officer at Alldus International. Today, we've had Jakob Muus on the podcast. He's the CEO and founder of Attrax. Jakob, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.